Greetings to my dear viewers. I hope you enjoy this story and I look forward to your thoughts in the comments. My name is Amelia, I'm 46, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the head of creative strategy at Morrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious advertising agencies on the East Coast. Or at least, that's what my business card said. What it didn't mention was that I was the creative force behind every major campaign that put Morrison on the map over the past 8 years. That every award sitting in our lobby's glass display case, every client testimonial framed on the conference room walls, every breakthrough campaign that made headlines, they all came from my mind, my vision, my sleepless nights. But if you asked my boss, David Morrison Jr., he'd lean back in his leather chair with that practiced smile and tell you about his collaborative leadership style and how he guided the creative process. He'd say it with such conviction that even I started to believe it for a while. David is everything you'd expect from a second-generation agency owner. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having to prove yourself. He wears tailored suits that cost more than most people's rent and drives a Tesla that he parks in the space marked reserved for president. At industry events, he's the one everyone wants to shake hands with, the one who gets quoted in Adweek, the one who accepts awards with humble speeches about team effort. But here's what they don't know. David Morrison Jr. couldn't create a compelling ad if his life depended on it. His idea of innovation is asking me to make it pop, or add some millennial flair. For 8 years, I've been the ghost behind his genius, the invisible architect of his reputation. It started with the Hartwell Hotels account, a $50 million campaign that could make or break agencies. I'd been developing the concept for months. Stories Begin Here, a campaign that would position each hotel as the starting point for life's memorable moments. The emotional storytelling angle, the visual metaphors, the integrated digital strategy, it was all mine. I remember the night I cracked it. I was in my home office at 2 a.m., surrounded by mood boards and half-empty coffee cups, when the entire campaign crystallized in my mind. I spent the next 18 hours creating a presentation that would revolutionize how hospitality brands connect with travelers. The next morning, I walked into David's office, exhausted but excited. I laid out the entire concept, the tagline, the visual identity, the multi-platform rollout strategy. His eyes lit up as I explained how we'd capture real guest stories, weave them into authentic narratives, and create an emotional bridge between the brand and potential customers. "This is brilliant, Amelia," he said, already reaching for his phone. "Absolutely brilliant. I need to call the Hartwell team right now." I watched him dial, watched him pace behind his desk as he spoke to the client. And then I heard it, him presenting my concept as if it had sprung from his own window. "So I was thinking," he said into the phone, "what if we positioned each hotel as the beginning of a story? Picture this, stories begin here." He winked at me while he spoke, as if we were sharing some inside joke. That was the first crack in my faith in him. Over the following months, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. David would schedule brainstorming sessions where I'd present ideas, and then he'd mysteriously have inspiration for very similar concepts in client meetings the next day. When the Hartwell campaign launched and won 3 industry awards, David gave his acceptance speech about pushing creative boundaries and innovative storytelling. He thanked the team, mentioned our collaborative spirit, but somehow my name never made it into the spotlight. The second crack came when I overheard him talking to his golf buddy in the hallway. "You know how it is, Tom. You hire good people, point them in the right direction, and take credit when they succeed. That's Management 101. They both laughed. I stood frozen outside his office, pretending to read emails on my phone while my heart hammered against my ribs. 3 months ago, David hired someone new. Madison Chin, 28, fresh out of a prestigious creative program, eager and talented. I liked her immediately. She reminded me of myself at that age, full of ideas and hungry to prove herself. But then I watched David do to Madison what he'd done to me. He'd invite her to client meetings, let her present preliminary concepts, and then swoop in to refine her ideas. He'd take her rough diamonds and claim he'd polished them to perfection. One Friday afternoon, I found Madison crying in the supply closet. "I don't understand," she said. "I've been working here for 3 months, and every idea I have ends up being David's idea by the time it reaches the client. Am I doing something wrong?" I helped her to the break room, made her tea, and saw myself 8 years ago, brilliant, eager, and slowly being erased. "You're not doing anything wrong," I told her. "You're just learning how the game is played here." But Madison wasn't me. She wasn't willing to disappear quietly. "This isn't right, Amelia. He's stealing our work." That night, I went home and opened a file I hadn't touched in years. Inside were copies of everything, every original concept, every email thread, every time-stamped creative brief. I'd been documenting without even realizing it, some survival instinct telling me to keep records. The breaking point came when I accidentally received an email meant for David. It was from a headhunter, discussing a senior creative director position at a major agency in Chicago. The salary was impressive, the role was prestigious, and it was everything I'd ever wanted. But the email wasn't about finding someone for the position, it was about David trying to get it for himself. The headhunter had heard about his groundbreaking work on the Hartwell campaign and wanted to discuss his creative vision. I stared at the screen, reading about how David Morrison Jr. was being courted as a visionary creative leader based on work that had kept me awake for months. Work that had poured out of my soul. Work that had my fingerprints all over it. The email went on to discuss his impressive portfolio and innovative approach. They specifically mentioned the Hartwell campaign's emotional storytelling and the stories begin here concept as examples of his creative genius. I printed the email, hands shaking. Then I opened my secret file and started cross-referencing dates, concepts, and timestamps. The pattern was undeniable. Every major campaign David had claimed credit for in the past 5 years had originated from my desk. That weekend, I made a decision that would change everything. I started organizing my evidence, but more importantly, I started making calls. I reached out to former colleagues, freelancers I'd worked with, even some clients who'd specifically requested to work with me on projects. I also did something I'd never done before, I updated my LinkedIn profile. Not with the sanitized corporate speak that had been there for years, but with specific examples of campaigns I'd created, strategies I'd developed, and results I'd achieved. Within 48 hours, my inbox was flooded with messages from recruiters, agency heads, and even some former clients who'd been trying to poach me for years. One message stood out. It was from Sarah Kim, the founder of a boutique agency in San Francisco that specialized in purpose-driven brands. She'd been following my work for years, the real work, not David's version of it. "Amelia," she wrote, "I've been hoping for the right moment to reach out. We're looking for a creative director who can help us redefine how brands connect with conscious consumers. Your work on the Hartwell campaign was exactly the kind of storytelling we want to bring to our clients. Would you be interested in a conversation?" I stared at the message for a long time. Sarah Kim knew my work. She'd seen past David's presentations to the real creative force behind the campaigns. She was offering me something I'd never had, recognition for my own talent. I scheduled a video call for the following Monday. The conversation with Sarah was everything I'd hoped for. She didn't just want to hire me, she wanted to partner with me. She offered me a creative director position with equity, the freedom to build my own team, and most importantly, credit for my work. "I believe in authentic creativity," she said. "I believe in giving credit where it's due. And I believe you're one of the most talented creative strategists in the industry." By the end of the call, I had a formal offer letter in my inbox. The salary was higher than what I was making at Morrison, but more than that, it was a chance to finally be seen for who I really was. I spent the rest of the week tying up loose ends, documenting processes, and preparing for the transition. On Friday morning, I walked into David's office with my resignation letter. David was on a call when I knocked, but he gestured for me to come in. I placed the letter on his desk and waited. He glanced at it while continuing his conversation, then did a double take. "I'll call you back," he said, ending the call abruptly. He picked up the letter and read it quickly, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that looked almost like panic. "What is this?" he asked, waving the paper. "It's my resignation letter," I said calmly. "I'm giving you 2 weeks' notice." David leaned back in his chair and laughed. Actually laughed. "You're kidding, right? This is some kind of joke." "No joke," I said. "I'm leaving." His laughter stopped abruptly. "Leaving for what? You think you're going to just walk out of here and find something better?" He stood up and walked to the window, then turned back to face me. "Amelia, you're 46 years old. You've been working in the background for 8 years. Who's going to hire someone your age with no public profile?" The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. I'll figure it out. Will you? He sat back down, leaning forward with that patronizing smile I'd learned to hate. Because here's the thing, you don't exist in this industry. Your name isn't on any awards. You're not quoted in any articles. You've never given a keynote or spoken at a conference. As far as the advertising world is concerned, you're invisible. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I didn't let it show. Maybe that's about to change. David laughed again, but it sounded forced now. Change? At your age? Amelia, be realistic. You're not going to reinvent yourself at 46. You're not going to suddenly become the face of some campaign. You're a behind-the-scenes person, and that's fine. It's valuable. But it's not marketable. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. You know what's interesting about being behind the scenes? I asked, placing it on his desk. You see everything. You document everything. You remember everything. David's smile faltered slightly. What's that? It's a portfolio, I said. Every campaign I've created for this agency over the past 8 years. Every original concept, every creative brief, every timestamp showing when I developed each idea. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. Remember the Hartwell campaign. Stories begin here. Here's my original concept document, dated 3 months before our first client meeting. Here's the mood board I created at 2 a.m. Here's the email thread where I explained the emotional storytelling strategy. David's face went pale. Those are company documents. Everything created here belongs to the agency. You're right, I said. But authorship is a different thing entirely. And I can prove authorship. I pulled out another document. The Greenfield Bank campaign. Banking on tomorrow. Here's my original strategy memo, complete with the tagline and visual concept. Dated 2 weeks before you presented it to the client as your breakthrough idea. David was gripping the edge of his desk now. What are you trying to prove? I'm not trying to prove anything, I said. I'm just sharing information. For instance, did you know that Sarah Kim from Purpose Creative has been following my work for years? She reached out to me last week. Sarah Kim. David's voice was tight. She offered me a creative director position, with equity, and public credit for my work. I smiled. She specifically mentioned the Hartwell campaign as an example of the kind of storytelling she wants to bring to her clients. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he cleared his throat. Look, Amelia. You're obviously upset about something. Maybe we can discuss a raise, or a promotion, or... I'm not upset, I interrupted. I'm done. Done being invisible. Done letting you take credit for my work. Done pretending that your management style is anything other than creative theft. I pulled out my phone and showed him my LinkedIn profile. I updated this over the weekend. Listed all the campaigns I've actually created, with specific details about my strategic approach and creative process. David looked at the screen, his expression growing more strained. You can't do that. Those are confidential. Those are my ideas, I said firmly. My concepts. My strategic thinking. I'm not sharing client information or proprietary data. I'm sharing my creative process and my role in developing successful campaigns. I scrolled to the notifications. I've gotten 47 direct messages from industry leaders in the past 3 days. Agencies wanting to hire me. Clients asking if I'm available for freelance work. Recruiters with positions that would triple my salary. David's confidence was cracking. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled up the email from Sarah Kim and showed him the offer letter. This is real. This is happening. And it's happening because people in this industry know good work when they see it, even if they don't know who created it. I put my phone away and looked directly at him. You built your reputation on my creativity, David. But reputations built on lies have a way of crumbling. David stood up and walked to the window again. When he turned back, his face was different. The practiced charm was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want to leave with dignity, I said. I want to transition my projects properly. And I want you to understand that the days of taking credit for other people's work are over. You can't prove. I can prove everything, I interrupted. Every concept, every strategy, every creative breakthrough you've claimed as your own. I have timestamps, email threads, original documents, and most importantly, I have witnesses. David frowned. Witnesses. Madison, 4-1. She's been documenting everything since our conversation last week. She's not going to let you erase her the way you tried to erase me. I pulled out another document. I also reached out to Tom Bradley from Hartwell Hotels. Interesting conversation. He specifically remembered requesting to work with me on the campaign. He said he was impressed by my authentic storytelling approach, and was disappointed when you started taking meetings without me. David's hands were shaking slightly. That's not. I was managing the account. You were managing the account by stealing my work and presenting it as your own, I said. Tom knows it. Sarah Kim knows it. The industry is starting to know it. I reached into my bag one more time and pulled out a business card. I had these made over the weekend. David took the card and read it. Amelia Rodriguez, Creative Director, Purpose Creative Agency. Specializing in authentic brand storytelling. I start Monday, I said. My first project is a campaign for Hartwell Hotel's new luxury line. Tom specifically requested me. The color drained from David's face. Tom is our client. Tom is Hartwell's client, I corrected. And he's free to work with whichever agency he chooses for new projects. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I'll finish out my 2 weeks, of course. Professional courtesy. David looked up at me, and for the first time in 8 years, I saw him as he really was, not the confident industry leader, but a man who'd built his entire career on stolen brilliance. Amelia, he said quietly. I hope you understand that I never meant for it to be personal. It's just business. I smiled. I know. And this is just business too. Word spread quickly through the industry. Within a week, Adweek ran a profile on Purpose Creative's new creative director, me. The article highlighted my work on the Hartwell campaign and included quotes from Tom Bradley about my innovative approach to emotional storytelling. Madison gave her notice the following Monday. She's joining my team at Purpose Creative as a junior creative director. David Morrison Jr. is still running Morrison & Associates, but their reputation has taken a hit. They lost the Hartwell account and 2 other major clients who specifically requested to work with me. The industry is small, and word travels fast. As for me, I'm finally visible. Finally recognized. Finally building something that's authentically mine. At 46, I'm just getting started. The truth has a way of finding the light, even when it's been buried for years. Sometimes it takes courage to step out of the shadows, but once you do, you realize the shadows were never protecting you, they were just hiding your power.